I stood in the mahogany, paneled conference room on the 42nd floor, watching my mother-in-law's face drain of color as the lawyer read the final page of the document. Her perfectly manicured fingers gripped the edge of the table so hard her knuckles turned white. Beside her, my soon-to-be ex-husband Richard looked like he might be sick. The number the lawyer had just announced, the Adrian 47 million, hung in the air like thunder. Before the story begins, please leave us a comment telling us which state or city you are watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe so this channel can grow and bring you more exciting stories. That's impossible, Patricia hissed, her composure cracking for the first time since I'd known her. Her grandfather was a farmer. A farmer, Mr. Chen, my grandfather's estate attorney, adjusted his glasses and smiled slightly. A farmer who happened to own 200 acres of land that Silicon Valley was built on, Mrs. Blackwood. Land he purchased in 1952 for $3 an acre. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I simply stood there, wearing the same 40 dress from Target I'd worn to my grandfather's funeral 3 months ago, the funeral they'd forbidden me from attending. The dress I'd cried in. The dress I'd slept in on a friend's couch when I had nowhere else to go. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how it all started. 2 years ago, my life was exactly what I'd always dreamed it would be. I was 32 years old, married to Richard Blackwood Isuru, living in a stunning brownstone in Boston's Beacon Hill neighborhood. The address alone, 18 Mount Vernon Street, was enough to make people take notice. The house had been in Richard's family for 4 generations, all exposed brick and original hardwood floors, with a view of the Charles River that took my breath away every morning. I woke up that Tuesday in October the way I woke up every day, to silence. Not peaceful silence. The kind of silence that fills a house when 2 people have nothing left to say to each other. The bedroom was painted in faro and balls. Elephant's breath. A gray so sophisticated it looked different in every light. The morning sun filtered through the plantation shutters, casting stripes across our king-sized bed with its 3,000 Italian linens. I could smell Richard's cologne lingering in the air, Tom Ford Noir de Noir, 400s a bottle, even though he'd left the bedroom an hour ago. I ran my fingers over the cold sheets on his side of the bed. Still made. He hadn't slept there again. The hardwood floor was cold under my bare feet as I walked to the bathroom. I caught my reflection in the mirror, dark circles under my eyes, my brown hair tangled. My silk nightgown twisted from another restless night. I looked tired. I looked sad. I looked like someone I didn't recognize anymore. Downstairs, I found Richard in the kitchen, sitting at the marble island with his laptop open and a cup of coffee steaming beside him. He was wearing one of his custom suits from his Savile Row tailor, this one charcoal gray with subtle pinstripes, probably 5,000. His dark hair was perfectly styled. He didn't look up when I entered. "Good morning," I said softly. "Morning." His eyes stayed on his screen. I moved to the espresso machine, a La Marzocco that cost more than my first car, and started making myself a cappuccino. The machine hissed and gurgled, filling the silence. I could feel the tension in the room like humidity before a storm. "Your mother called yesterday," I said, watching the crema form on top of my espresso. "She wants us to come to dinner on Friday." "I'll be there." He still didn't look up. "She invited both of us down." "You don't need to come." The words hit me like a slap, but I tried to keep my voice steady. "Richard, she's my mother-in-law." "Of course I should. She doesn't want you there." "Sophia?" Finally, he looked at me and his blue eyes were cold. "Why do you always force yourself into places you're not wanted?" I felt my throat tighten. "I'm your wife, are you?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Could have fooled me. "What is that supposed to mean?" He closed his laptop with a sharp snap. "It means I'm tired of this, Sophia. I'm tired of you, tired of your neediness, tired of your questions, tired of coming home to this suffocating domesticity." Each word felt like a physical blow. My hands shook as I set down my coffee cup. "If you're unhappy, we can talk about it. We can go to counseling." "We can." "I don't want counseling." He stood up, grabbing his briefcase. "I want space. I want my life back. He stopped himself, pressing his lips together. "You want what, Richard?" "Nothing. Forget it." He grabbed his keys from the hook by the door. "I'll be late tonight." "Don't wait up." The door closed behind him with a definitive click that echoed through our beautiful, empty house. I stood there in the kitchen, surrounded by Zero appliances and Calcutta marble countertops, feeling more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. The cappuccino sat untouched on the counter, its foam slowly deflating, just like my hopes for our marriage. Outside the window, I could see our neighbor Mrs. Chen tending to her fall chrysanthemums, her life carrying on normally while mine crumbled. What I didn't know was that this morning, this painful, horrible morning, would be one of the last peaceful moments I'd have for a very long time, because the worst was yet to come. I tried to be a good wife. God, I tried so hard. I spent that day doing what I'd done every day for the past 3 years, trying to be perfect. I went to my yoga class at the studio on Newbury Street, smiling at the other women even though I felt like crying. I stopped at Whole Foods and bought organic vegetables for a dinner Richard probably wouldn't eat. I picked up his dry cleaning, confirming they'd gotten out the wine stain from his shirt collar, a stain I definitely hadn't made. Since I'd been in bed when he came home at 2 a.m. last Saturday, I pushed that thought away. I was good at pushing thoughts away. I spent 2 hours making coco au vin from scratch, following Julia Child's recipe exactly. The kitchen filled with the smell of red wine and herbs, butter and chicken. I set the table with our wedding china, Herond porcelain, a gift from Richard's mother, who'd made it clear she thought it was too good for someone like me. Someone like me. That's how Patricia always said it, with just enough emphasis to make it clear what she meant. Someone from nowhere. Someone with no pedigree. Someone who'd grown up in a modest house in Sacramento with a mother who worked as a teacher and a grandfather who farmed. Richard came home at 9 p.m., long after the food had gone cold. I made dinner. I said, hating how small my voice sounded. I ate already. He loosened his tie, not meeting my eyes. Does it matter? Richard, please. Can we just sit down and talk? Really talk? He sighed, the kind of exasperated sigh you'd give a persistent child. What do you want to talk about, Sophia? Us? Whatever's wrong. I feel like you're pulling away from me, and I don't understand why. Did I do something? Because if I did, I want to fix it. I love you. I want to make this work. For just a moment, something flickered across his face. Guilt, maybe. Or pity. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by that cold indifference that had become his default expression around me. You didn't do anything, he said quietly. That's the problem. You never do anything. You're just here. Always waiting for me, always needing me. It's exhausting. I'm your wife. I'm supposed to be here? Maybe that's the problem. He headed toward the stairs. I'm sleeping in the guest room. I have an early meeting. I watched him walk away, my throat burning with unshed tears. The coq au vin sat congealing on the stove. I'd spent 2 hours making a meal for a man who couldn't spare 2 minutes to eat it. Little did I realize he'd already eaten dinner with someone else. Someone who made him feel alive in ways I apparently couldn't anymore. Someone who was, at that very moment, lying in bed waiting for him to text her that he was free. But I wouldn't learn that for another 3 weeks. The unraveling happened slowly at first, then all at once. Richard started working later and later. He stopped sleeping in our bedroom entirely, claiming his snoring was keeping me awake, even though he'd never snored before. He became protective of his phone, always keeping it face down, always taking it with him even to the bathroom. When I suggested we take a weekend trip to reconnect, he told me he couldn't possibly take time off work. But the real change was in Patricia, my mother-in-law. Patricia Blackwood was Boston old money personified, silver hair always in a perfect chignon, pearls that had belonged to her grandmother, a voice that could cut glass when she wanted it to. She'd never liked me, but she'd been civil enough when Richard and I first married. Now her contempt had become blatant. She started calling me by the wrong name. Oh, Sarah, could you get me some tea? Sally, did you remember to send those thank you notes? I'd correct her and she'd smile slightly, like it was an honest mistake, but her eyes said otherwise. She'd invite Richard to family events and specifically tell him not to bring me. It's just immediate family, she'd say, even though I was immediate family now. Or supposed to be. One afternoon in November, she called me directly. My heart actually lifted when I saw her name on my phone. Maybe she wanted to talk. Maybe she wanted to bridge this gap between us. Sophia. Her voice was crisp, businesslike. I need you to come to the house tomorrow at 2 p.m. There's something we need to discuss. Of course. Should I bring anything? Should Richard? Just you. Come alone. The Blackwood estate in Chestnut Hill was a sprawling Georgian colonial set on 3 acres of manicured grounds. I'd always felt intimidated pulling up the circular driveway, parking next to Patricia's Mercedes and her husband Gregory's Bentley. The house itself was a monument to old money, white columns, black shutters, a front door that probably cost more than most people's cars. Patricia's housekeeper, Maria, let me in with a sympathetic look that should have warned me. She led me to Patricia's private sitting room. All chenoiserie wallpaper and antique furniture worth more than I'd earn in a lifetime. Patricia sat in a wingback chair like it was a throne, her spine perfectly straight. She didn't stand when I entered, didn't smile, just gestured to the chair across from her with one perfectly manicured hand. Sit. I sat, my palms sweating despite the cool November air. The room smelled like her perfume, Channel No. 5, classic and expensive. Through the window behind her, I could see the formal gardens, already brown and dormant for winter. I'll get straight to the point. Patricia said, folding her hands in her lap, I want you to divorce my son. The words hit me like ice water. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. What? You heard me perfectly well. I want you to divorce Richard. The marriage was a mistake from the beginning, and it's time to rectify it. I don't understand. Patricia, I love Richard. We're married. We took vows. Vows. She said the word like it tasted bad. Sophia, let's not pretend this marriage was ever anything more than what it was. Richard had a momentary lapse in judgment. He was charmed by your novelty, your freshness. But that's worn off now, hasn't it? My face burned. We're having some difficulties, but all marriages do. We can work through. You can't work through fundamental incompatibility. She leaned forward slightly. You don't belong in this world, Sophia. You never did. You try so hard, but everyone can see the cracks. The wrong fork at dinner. The cheap dress at the charity gala. The way you don't understand our references, our history, our world. Each word was carefully chosen to wound. And they did. God, they did. Richard married me knowing who I was. I managed, my voice shaking. If he has a problem with our marriage, he should be the one telling me, not you. Richard is too kind to hurt you directly. He's always been soft-hearted. But I'm not. Her eyes were cold, calculating. You're making him miserable, Sophia. Can't you see that? He comes to me, tells me how suffocated he feels, how trapped. Every day you stay as another day, you're hurting him. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not in front of her. If Richard wants a divorce, he can ask me himself. He will. Soon enough. I'm simply suggesting you make it easier on everyone by initiating it yourself. Be the bigger person. Walk away with some dignity intact. I'm not walking away from my marriage. Patricia's lips thinned into a hard line. Fine. Then let me make something else clear. Gregory and I are revising our wills. We'd planned to leave Richard a substantial inheritance, $127 million to be precise. But now we're restructuring everything. If Richard is still married to you when we die, he won't see a penny. Everything will go to his sister Amanda. Every single asset, the properties, the stocks, the trust funds, the art collection. All of it. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. You're blackmailing me. I'm protecting my family's legacy from someone who only married into it for money. I didn't marry Richard for money! Didn't you? She tilted her head, studying me like I was an insect. A girl from nowhere, from nothing, suddenly elevated to Boston society. Living in a house worth $4-5 million. Wearing jewelry you could never afford on your own. It must have seemed like a fairy tale. I married Richard because I loved him. My voice broke on the last word. I still love him. Love. She laughed softly. How quaint. How middle class. Sophia, in our world, marriage is about family, legacy, compatibility. Love is optional. And clearly, whatever Richard felt for you has expired. You're holding on to something that's already dead. I stood up, my legs shaking. I'm not divorcing Richard because you told me to. If our marriage ends, it will be because he wants it to end. Not you. Brave words. Patricia stood as well, smoothing her cashmere skirt. But you'll change your mind. Trust me. When you have nothing left, when Richard has made it clear he doesn't want you anymore, when you're completely alone, you'll realize I was right. And by then, any settlement I might have offered will be off the table. Think about it, Sophia. Think very carefully. I walked out of that house with my head high, but I cried all the way home. My hands shook so badly I had to pull over twice on Commonwealth Avenue, parked at a meter with my forehead pressed against the steering wheel while sobs racked my body. Patricia's words echoed in my head, mixing with Richard's recent coldness, creating a toxic cocktail of doubt and pain. What I didn't know was that this conversation was just the opening move. Patricia had been planning this for months, methodically, carefully, and I was about to discover just how far she was willing to go to erase me from her family. The truth was far darker than I imagined. The discovery happened on a Friday evening, 3 weeks after my conversation with Patricia. Richard had told me he was going to New York for a business conference, leaving Thursday and returning Sunday. He'd been distant the entire week before, barely speaking to me, spending most nights in his study with the door closed. I'd spent Friday trying to distract myself, lunch with an old friend, browsing bookstores on Newbury Street, anything to avoid coming home to our empty house. But by 7 p.m., I was walking up the steps to our brownstone, fishing for my keys in my bag. That's when I heard it, louder. A woman's laughter floating through our living room window, which was cracked open despite the December cold. My first thought was that I'd left the TV on. My second thought died as I heard Richard's voice, low and intimate, saying something I couldn't quite make out, followed by more laughter. My hand froze on my keys. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear blood rushing in my ears. The brownstone's front steps suddenly felt unsteady beneath my feet. The street lamp above me cast everything in harsh yellow light. A couple walked past me on the sidewalk, laughing together, completely unaware that my entire world was shattering. I could have knocked, should have knocked, but something made me use my key as quietly as possible, turning it slowly in the lock, easing the door open inch by inch. The foyer was dark, but light spilled from the living room. I could hear music playing, something jazzy and low, maybe Miles Davis. I could smell perfume, unfamiliar and expensive, with notes of jasmine and something darker. And I could hear voices. Told her I was in New York, Richard was saying, his voice relaxed in a way it hadn't been around me in months. We have all weekend, poor Sophia. The woman's voice was familiar, maddeningly familiar, but I couldn't place it through the rushing in my ears. Does she have any idea? God, no. She's completely clueless. It's almost sad how trusting she is. They both laughed. I moved closer to the living room entrance, my body moving on autopilot, even though my brain was screaming at me to run, to leave, to not see what I was about to see. The hardwood floor was cold beneath my feet. I'd taken my shoes off out of habit, the habit of a woman who cared about not scuffing expensive floors. The habit of a woman who still thought this was her home. Your mother is getting impatient, the woman said. She wants this wrapped up before Christmas. I know. I told her I'm working on it. But Sophia's being stubborn about the divorce talk. She keeps trying to fix things. His tone was mocking, cruel in a way I'd never heard before. It's pathetic, really. Last week she made this elaborate dinner, set out candles, the whole romantic nonsense. Like coq au vin was going to save our marriage. That is pathetic. The woman giggled. What did you do? Told her I'd already eaten. You should have seen her face. More laughter. I pressed my hand against the wall to steady myself. The plaster was cool and smooth under my palm. Just tell her you want out, the woman said. Why drag it on? Because Mother has a better plan. If I push too hard too fast, Sophia might actually fight for the house, or alimony, or God forbid, try to stick it out just to spite us. But if I make her miserable enough first, make her feel small and unwanted, she'll leave on her own. Then she gets nothing. Mother's already had her will rewritten. Sophia doesn't know it, but she was never in it to begin with. The whole thing was a bluff to make her panic. That's cold, the woman said, but she was laughing. Effective but cold, Mother's specialty. And honestly, it's working. You should see Sophia lately. She's desperate, crying all the time, begging me to talk to her. Another month or two of this, and she'll be so broken down she'll sign anything just to escape. My vision blurred. The room tilted. I grabbed the doorframe to steady myself, my fingernails digging into the wood. Well, once she's gone, you'll finally be free, the woman said. We can stop sneaking around. Your mother will stop nagging. And we can be together properly? I'll drink to that. I heard the clink of glasses. I stepped into the doorway. The living room looked like a scene from someone else's life. Candles lit on the mantel, casting flickering shadows on the walls, 2 wine glasses on the coffee table, beside an open bottle of Chateau Margaux, Richard's favorite, 500 a bottle. The one we'd been saving for our anniversary. My husband on our couch, his tie loosened, his shirt partially unbuttoned, his arm around a woman who Jennifer, Richard's colleague, his father's protege at the law firm Blackwood and Associates. The woman I'd had to dinner at our house a dozen times, who'd smiled at me across our table, who'd complimented my cooking, who'd hugged me at our last Christmas party and told me I was so lucky to have Richard, that he was such a good man. She was wearing a red dress, silk expensive, her blonde hair falling in perfect waves over her shoulders. Richard's jacket was draped over the armchair. Her shoes, Louboutin heels with their signature red soles, were kicked off under the coffee table. They both froze when they saw me. The jazz record kept playing, Miles Davis's Trumpet painfully beautiful in the suddenly silent room. Sophia. Richard stood up, his face going pale, then flushing red. You're supposed to be out. I finished for him. My voice sounded strange, distant, like it was coming from someone else. Like I was watching this happen to a different woman. Yes, I was out. I came home. To my house, that I live in, with my husband. Jennifer had the grace to look uncomfortable, but she didn't move from the couch. Didn't apologize. Just watched me with something that looked almost like pity, her lipstick-stained wine glass still in her hand. How long? The words came out as a whisper. Sophia, it's not what you. Hagabalange. I screamed at this time and both of them flinched. The sound of my own voice scared me, raw and broken and furious. 6 months. Jennifer said quietly. She stood up now, smoothing her red dress. Since June, since the firm's summer retreat, 6 months, half a year, 26 weeks. While I'd been making him breakfast every morning, doing his laundry, trying desperately to understand why he was pulling away. While I'd been blaming myself, wondering what I'd done wrong, crying myself to sleep in our bed. While I'd been having that horrible conversation with Patricia, thinking my marriage still had a chance. Get out, I whispered. Sophia, Richard started. Gito tof myos! I grabbed the wine bottle, my anniversary wine, the wine I'd thought we'd drink together to celebrate our love, and I threw it. Not at them. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. I wasn't violent, but at the wall beside the fireplace. It shattered spectacularly, red wine exploding across our cream-colored walls like arterial blood, glass shards glittering on the hardwood floor. Jennifer grabbed her shoes and ran for the door, nearly tripping in her haste. Richard started to follow her, then stopped, turning back to me. Something in his expression had changed. The panic was gone, replaced by something colder, harder. We need to talk about this, he said. Now you want to talk? I laughed, and it sounded hysterical even to my own ears, shrill and broken. No, after 6 months of lying to me. After letting me think I was crazy for feeling you pull away. After making me believe it was my fault. After planning with your mother to systematically destroy me. You were listening. It wasn't a question. I heard everything. The plan. The manipulation. How pathetic you think I am. How you've been making me miserable on purpose. My voice cracked. I loved you, Richard. I loved you so much? Loved. Past tense. He grabbed his tie from the couch, started putting it back on with steady hands, like this was just another business transaction. Good. That makes this easier. Makes what easier? Sophia, let's be honest for once. He met my eyes, and there was no warmth there, no guilt, nothing but cold pragmatism. This marriage was a mistake from the beginning. You and I, we're from different worlds. My mother was right about that, even if I didn't want to see it at first. You were fun for a while. A novelty. But you don't fit in my life. You don't fit in my world. And I don't want to keep pretending anymore. Each word landed like a physical blow. We took vows. We were young. I was rebelling against my parents. You were pretty and sweet, and so different from the women I'd grown up with. But that's not enough to build a life on, is it? Not really. I gave you 3 years of my life. And I gave you 3 years of mine. He grabbed his jacket from the chair, shrugged it on with practiced ease. I gave you this house, this life, access to a world you never could have reached on your own. I'd say we're even. Even. My voice rose. You cheated on me, for 6 months, with someone I trusted. You and your mother conspired to make me so miserable I'd leave on my own. You're stealing from me, my dignity, my sense of reality, I'm not stealing anything. His voice was sharp now, cutting. This house, mine. The car, mine. The bank accounts, joint, which means I can empty them whenever I want. And I will, Sophia. Tomorrow morning, I'm taking every penny. I'm canceling your credit cards. Your insurance. Everything. Because you need to understand something. You have no power here. You never did. I stared at him, this man I'd loved, this man I'd married, and I didn't recognize him. Who are you? I'm the same person I've always been. You just chose not to see it. He walked toward the door, then paused. I'll stay at my club tonight. I want you out of this house by Monday, 5 p.m. Take your clothes, your personal items, nothing else. If you're not gone, I'll have the police remove you for trespassing. This is my home? No, Sophia. It's my family's home. You've just been living in it. He opened the front door, letting in a gust of cold December air that smelled like snow. My lawyer will be in touch about the divorce. If you're smart, you won't fight it. Because trust me, my family has resources you can't even imagine. We will destroy you. He walked out, leaving the door open behind him. I heard his car start in the driveway. Heard the sound of the engine fade as he drove away, probably to Jennifer's apartment, probably to laugh about this with her. To tell her how I'd screamed and cried and thrown things like the pathetic, desperate woman they'd turned me into. I stood there for I don't know how long. Minutes or hours, staring at the open door, at the red wine dripping down the wall, at the candles still burning, at the rumpled couch cushions where my husband had been holding another woman. The cold air poured in, but I couldn't move to close the door. I couldn't move at all. Then my legs gave out. I sank to the floor right there in the doorway, my back against the wall, and I sobbed. Deep, wrenching sobs that tore through me like physical pain, that made my ribs ache and my throat raw. The floor was hard and cold beneath me. The house was silent, except for the record player, which had started skipping, the same 3 notes over and over and over, like a broken heart trying to beat. A neighbor, Mr. Peterson from next door, appeared in the open doorway. Mrs. Blackwood. Sophia, are you all right? I heard shouting and, oh my God, he saw the wine on the walls, the broken glass, me collapsed on the floor. Should I call someone? No, I managed. Please, just go. Are you sure? You look, please. I couldn't bear for anyone to see me like this. Couldn't bear the pity in his eyes. He left reluctantly, but I heard him telling his wife to keep an eye on the house. Their whispers carried in the cold night air. More people to witness my humiliation. More people to talk about how poor Sophia Blackwood had fallen apart, how she'd always been unstable, how Richard was right to leave her. That moment would change everything, but right then all I felt was broken, shattered beyond repair. That night was the longest of my life. I eventually closed the front door and locked it, but I couldn't make myself go upstairs to our bedroom. Instead, I stayed on the living room floor, hugging my knees to my chest, watching the candles burn down to nothing. The wine stain on the wall looked like a wound. The broken glass glittered in the dying candlelight like scattered diamonds. Around 3 a.m., I finally moved. My body was stiff and aching, my legs numb from sitting so long on the hard floor. I walked through the house like a ghost, touching things that had been part of my daily life for 3 years. The coffee maker I used every morning. The bookshelf where I'd arranged our books by color because I thought it looked pretty, and Richard had rolled his eyes, but let me do it anyway. The throw pillows I'd bought at Home Goods, trying to make this museum of a house feel like a home. None of it was mine. It had never been mine. I went upstairs to the bedroom and started packing. I didn't have many clothes. Most of my wardrobe had been donated when Patricia deemed it unsuitable for a Blackwood wife. The designer clothes Richard had bought me didn't feel like mine either, but I packed them anyway. I'd probably have to sell them. I'd need the money. The jewelry box sat on my dresser. I opened it slowly. Diamond earrings. Richard's first anniversary gift. A sapphire necklace, his mother's choice, not his. A pearl bracelet. All expensive, all cold. At the bottom of the box was a small velvet pouch. Inside was my mother's wedding ring, a simple gold band with a tiny diamond, worth maybe $500. She'd worn it for 30 years before she died. I slipped it onto my finger. It was the only thing in that entire house that truly belonged to me. I packed through the night and into Saturday morning. By the time the sun rose, I had everything that was mine: 4 suitcases of clothes, 3 boxes of books and photos, my laptop, my mother's jewelry. 3 years of marriage fit into the trunk of my Honda Civic. My phone started ringing at 8 a.m. Unknown numbers. I didn't answer. Then a text from Patricia. Richard informed me of last night's unfortunate scene. The movers will arrive at 9 a.m. to ensure you remove only what belongs to you. I trust you'll cooperate. Movers. She was sending movers to watch me, to make sure I didn't steal anything from her precious family. They arrived exactly at 9 a.m. 2 large men in gray uniforms who looked uncomfortable but professional. They followed me room to room as I finished packing, checking everything I took against some list Patricia had given them. When I tried to take a photo album from the study, one of them stopped me. That album contains Blackwood family photos, ma'am. It stays. Half of these photos are from my wedding. Blackwood family photos, he repeated firmly. I left the album. By 11 a.m. I was done. I stood in the foyer one last time, looking at the house that had never really been my home. The morning light through the stained glass window cast colored shadows on the floor. I could smell the furniture polish Maria used. Everything was beautiful and perfect, and completely devoid of any trace that I'd ever lived there. I need your house key, ma'am, one of the movers said. I unhooked it from my keyring, the ring Richard had given me on our wedding day, engraved with our initials. My hand shook, and the alarm code needs to be changed. What is it currently? Cell 427, April 27th, my birthday. My voice cracked on the last word. He wrote it down without comment. I walked out to my car, loaded the last box, and drove away. In the rearview mirror, I watched the brownstone disappear. I didn't know where I was going. I just drove. I ended up at my friend Emma's apartment in Somerville. A tiny one-bedroom in a triple-decker on a street that smelled like garbage and car exhaust and reality. Emma was a teacher, one of my few friends from before Richard, one of the few people who'd stayed in touch even after I'd been absorbed into the Blackwood world. She took one look at my face and pulled me inside. What happened? I told her everything. The affair. The plan, the cruelty. The eviction. She made tea I couldn't drink and held me while I cried into her shoulder. You can stay here as long as you need, she said. I mean it, Sophia. We'll figure this out. But I could see the worry in her eyes. Emma's apartment was 600 square feet. She was barely making rent on a teacher's salary. And I was about to become a much bigger problem than either of us realized. What I didn't know was that Richard's threat to take everything hadn't been empty words. He'd meant every syllable. Monday morning, I woke up on Emma's lumpy pull-out couch, feeling like I'd aged 10 years in 3 days. My entire life fit into 4 suitcases and 3 boxes stacked in Emma's hallway. The apartment smelled like her lavender candles and the coffee she was making in her tiny galley kitchen. I'm making you breakfast, she called. Eggs, okay? I'm not hungry. You need to eat. I didn't argue. She was right. I needed to get myself together. I needed to find a lawyer, figure out my rights, understand what I could fight for in the divorce. But first, I needed to access some money. Our joint checking account had about 15,000 in it, money I'd deposited from my freelance graphic design work over the past year, plus what was left of my small savings from before we married. It wasn't much, but it was enough to rent an apartment and retain an attorney while I figured out what came next. After Emma left for school, I got dressed in jeans and a sweater, comfortable clothes, not the polished outfits Patricia had insisted I wear. I pulled my hair into a ponytail. I looked at myself in Emma's bathroom mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Dark circles, hollow eyes, but also something else. A hint of anger, finally. Cutting through the grief, I drove to the Citizens Bank on Tremont Street, the one I'd been using for 5 years. The branch was busy with the Monday morning crowd. People depositing paychecks, elderly couples asking about CDs, harried parents juggling toddlers and account papers. Normal people living normal lives. The teller, Michael, usually greeted me with a smile and small talk about the weather or the Patriots. Today, when I approached his window, his expression shifted. Uncomfortable, apologetic. I need to withdraw $500, I said, sliding my debit card across the counter. He scanned it, frowned at his screen, scanned it again. His fingers moved across his keyboard, clicking rapidly. Mrs. Blackwood, I'm sorry, but this account has been closed. The words didn't make sense at first. What? No. There must be a mistake. Check again. He did, his discomfort growing more obvious. No mistake. The account was closed Saturday morning at 9:47 a.m. All funds were transferred out. My stomach dropped. That's impossible. That was a joint account. I should have been notified. He can't just… Actually, if one account holder withdraws all funds and closes the account, they can. It's legal on a joint account. Both parties have full access to all funds. Saturday at 9:47 a.m., while I was packing my clothes, while the movers were watching me, while I was handing over my house key. Richard had been at the bank, taking every penny. How much was in there? I asked, even though I already knew. Michael hesitated. I'm not supposed to? Please. He glanced around, then lowered his voice. 14. 847.23 withdrawn in full and transferred to a sole ownership account in Mr. Blackwood's name only. Nearly $15,000. Gone. I have other accounts, I said, my voice shaking. I pulled out my credit card, the Amex I used for groceries, gas, emergencies. Can you check if this is active? He scanned it. His expression told me the answer before he spoke. Cancelled. As of Saturday morning, I have a savings account. A personal one. Just in my name. I'd opened it years ago, before Richard, back when I was still freelancing and wanted something just for me. There was about 8,000 zalausen in it, not much, but something. My emergency fund. Michael checked, the pity in his eyes made me want to scream, also closed. Saturday morning, 8/1/27 withdrawn. But that was just my name. How could he… Do you know if you added him as a beneficiary at any point? Or signed any joint access forms? I thought back. 3 years ago, shortly after we married, Richard had said something about estate planning, making sure we could access each other's accounts. If something happened, I'd signed papers at his lawyer's office. I'd trusted him. He had legal access, Michael said gently. I'm so sorry. The bank suddenly felt too hot, too small, too full of people living their normal lives while mine imploded. I could feel sweat prickling under my arms. My mouth was dry. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Too bright. Is there anything else I can help you with today? Michael asked. Anything else? Like I was just another customer with routine banking needs. No, I whispered. I walked out of the bank in a daze. Outside, the December air was sharp and cold, biting at my face. Boston's financial district bustled around me. People in expensive coats, heading to important jobs, carrying cups of Starbucks that cost $7, probably spending more on their morning coffee than I currently had to my name. I checked my wallet. $63 in cash. I checked my bank app, though I already knew what it would show. 0. All accounts closed. I was 32 years old, sitting on a bench on Tremont Street, with $63 and no access to money. My phone started ringing. Unknown number. Then another. Then another. I answered the third call. Is this Sophia Blackwood? A woman's voice, professional and impatient. Yes. This is Sandra calling from Bay State Health regarding your outstanding balance of $431 for your emergency room visit last March. Your insurance has been terminated and your most recent payment was declined. We need to make arrangements for… What do you mean my insurance was terminated? According to our records, your policy through Blackwood and Associates was canceled effective Saturday. All claims are now your personal responsibility. We need to discuss payment options for… I hung up. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. It rang again immediately. Different number. Ms. Blackwood, this is calling from Visa regarding your past due balance of… I hung up. It rang again, and again, and again. Debt collectors, medical offices, the credit card company, all calling about bills that were suddenly unpaid because Richard had canceled everything. Every safety net I'd had was gone. He'd removed me from his insurance I'd thought covered me until the divorce was final. He'd stopped paying bills in my name. He'd systematically dismantled my entire financial life in less than 48 hours. I turned my phone off and sat on that bench, watching people pass by. A mother with a stroller. A businessman arguing loudly into his phone. 2 college students laughing together. Everyone going about their day, while I tried to figure out how you rebuild a life when someone has taken everything from you. I couldn't go back to Emma's yet. Couldn't face her with this news. So I walked. 3 miles through Boston in December, from the financial district through downtown. Past Boston Common, where Christmas lights were already up, through the public garden where the swan boats were covered for winter, all the way to Somerville. My feet ached in my boots, expensive boots Richard had bought me. Boots that would have felt obscenely luxurious if I'd known I'd be walking miles in them, because I couldn't afford a 112 Uber. The coffee I'd bought at Starbucks with my precious cash $5.47 for a latte had gone cold in my hand hours ago. When I finally made it back to Emma's building, I climbed the 3 flights of stairs slowly. My legs shook. My chest hurt. I felt like I'd run a marathon. Emma wasn't home yet. Still at school teaching 4th graders math and reading, doing important work for $48,000 a year. Her apartment was silent and dim in the winter afternoon light. I sat on her pull-out couch and stared at the wall. I should have been crying. Should have been angry. Should have been something. But all I felt was empty. Hollow. That night, lying on Emma's lumpy couch with her scratchy spare blanket pulled up to my chin, I did something I hadn't done since my mother died 5 years ago. I prayed. Not to God, I wasn't sure I believed anymore, but to my mother, to my grandfather, to anyone who might be listening in whatever came after death. I don't know what to do. I whispered into the dark. I have nothing. I am nothing. He took everything, and I don't know how to fight back. I don't know if I even can. The apartment was silent except for the radiator clanking and the sound of traffic outside on Highland Avenue. No answers came. No divine intervention. Just silence and the cold realization that I was completely, utterly alone. Little did I realize, I wasn't alone at all. And the answer to my prayer was already on its way. But the worst had to come first. The next 2 weeks were a blur of humiliation and survival. I spent Tuesday morning calling lawyers. Every single one wanted a retainer $5,000 minimum. Most wanted $10,000 or more. One laughed when I said I had $63 and no income. Honey, she said, not unkindly, you can't afford to divorce a Blackwood. Not without money of your own. They'll bury you in motions and paperwork until you can't afford to keep fighting. My advice? Sign whatever they offer and move on with your life. I tried legal aid. They were backlogged for 6 months and I didn't qualify anyway. Technically, I was still married to a wealthy man, even though I couldn't access any of his wealth. I tried to sign up for state health insurance. Denied? Still covered under spouse's policy according to their records, even though that policy had been canceled. I tried to file for emergency assistance. Too much potential assets in the marital estate. Every system that was supposed to help people like me had a catch-22. I was too married to get help as a single person, but too broke to access anything as a married one. Wednesday, I went back to my old freelance clients, trying to drum up work. Most had moved on to other designers. One offered me a small project, $500 for a logo redesign. I accepted gratefully. It was due in 2 weeks. Thursday, Emma came home and found me crying at her tiny kitchen table. Sophia, you have to eat something. You've barely touched food in days. I can't afford food. You're staying in my house. You eat my food. That's not even a question. She put a plate of spaghetti in front of me. Did you reach any lawyers? They all want money I don't have. What about your grandfather? In California. Could he help? My grandfather. I hadn't spoken to him in months. Richard had discouraged our relationship, saying weekly phone calls to Sacramento were excessive. Grandpa Chen had never liked Richard, had warned me Boston society would chew you up and spit you out. I thought he was being overprotective. Turns out he'd been right. I can't ask him for money, Emma. He's 87 years old, living on his farm on Social Security. He doesn't have money to spare. Maybe he could just talk to you. Give you advice. He's always been so wise. She was right. But I felt so ashamed. I'd ignored his warnings, married Richard anyway, and now I'd have to admit he'd been right about everything. Still, that night, I called him. Wei? His voice, speaking Cantonese, the language of my childhood. Grandpa, it's Sophia. Siu, his nickname for me, little. Why you call so late? Everything okay? It was only 6 p.m. in California, but he went to bed early. I switched to Cantonese, rusty after years of Richard dismissing it as too ethnic, and told him everything. The affair, the eviction, the stolen money. All of it. He listened in silence. When I finished, he was quiet for so long I thought the call had dropped. Grandpa. I'm here, Siu. I'm just very angry. He took a breath. This man, this family, they are very bad people. Very cruel. But listen to me, you are strong. You have Chen family blood. We survive everything. Communist revolution, immigration, poverty, discrimination. We survive. You will survive this too. I don't feel strong. Strong people never feel strong when they're being tested. They just keep moving forward. He paused. Siu, I need to tell you something. I'm not well. The doctor says my heart is weak. My own heart clenched. What? Since when? Why didn't you tell me? Because you have your own life. Your husband. I didn't want to worry you. He coughed, and it sounded wet and painful. But now I think you should know. I won't be here much longer. Maybe few months. Maybe less. Grandpa, no. I'll come there. I'll take care of. You stay there. You fight. You show these people they cannot break you. His voice strengthened. And Siu. Remember, you are not poor. You are not powerless. You just don't know your strength yet. We talked for another hour. He told me stories about my grandmother, who died when I was 3, how she'd survived World War II in China, how she'd come to America with nothing and built a life through pure determination. He told me about the farm, about the land he'd bought decades ago with money he'd saved working in restaurant kitchens and laundromats. That land. Siu, it's your birthright, your future. Remember that? When we hung up, I felt marginally better. Not fixed, not okay, but less alone. What I didn't know was that this would be the last conversation I'd ever have with my grandfather. That moment would change everything. On Friday, December 13th, at 3:47 a.m., my phone rang. I jolted awake on Emma's couch, heart pounding. Nobody calls at 3:47 a.m. with good news. Hello, is this Sophia Chen Blackwood? An unfamiliar man's voice. Yes, this is Dr. Morrison from Sacramento General Hospital. I'm calling about your grandfather, James Chen. I'm sorry to inform you that he passed away approximately 2 hours ago. He'd been admitted through the emergency room yesterday afternoon with congestive heart failure. We did everything we could, but the rest of his words disappeared into white noise. My grandfather was dead. The man who'd raised me after my mother died. The man who'd walked me down the aisle at my wedding, even though he'd warned me not to marry Richard. The man I'd just spoken to 3 days ago. Gone. Viewing and funeral arrangements, Dr. Morrison was saying. His attorney has been notified and will be in touch regarding his estate. Again, I'm very sorry for your loss. The call ended. I sat in the dark of Emma's living room, holding my silent phone, unable to process what I'd just heard. My grandfather was gone. The last member of my family was gone. And I hadn't been there. I'd been across the country, drowning in my own problems. Too broke to even afford a plane ticket to say goodbye. Emma found me there in the morning, still sitting in the same position, tears dried on my face. Sophia, she knelt beside the couch. What's wrong? My grandfather died. Oh, honey. Oh, no. She wrapped her arms around me. I need to go to California. For the funeral. But I can't. I couldn't even say it. Couldn't admit that I was so broke I couldn't afford to bury my own grandfather. How much is a ticket? I checked my phone. Last-minute flights to Sacramento, the 847. I had 38 left after buying groceries for Emma's house, trying not to be a complete mooch. I'll buy it, Emma said immediately. You can't afford. I have a credit card. It's fine. Emma, you're already letting me live here rent-free. I can't let you. Sophia, stop. Her voice was firm. Your grandfather died. You're going to the funeral. I'm buying the ticket. We'll figure out everything else later. So she did. We found a flight leaving that afternoon, 847 that Emma couldn't afford, charging it to a credit card that was probably already maxed out. I packed my black dress, the one I'd worn to my mother's funeral 5 years ago, and got in an Uber to Logan Airport that Emma also paid for. The funeral was Sunday. Small and quiet at a Catholic church in Sacramento, with about 20 people, mostly elderly Chinese folks from Grandpa's community, people who'd known him for decades. I was the only family. I sat in the front pew alone, listening to the priest talk about a man whose life I apparently knew almost nothing about. After the service, a man in his 60s with silver hair and an expensive suit approached me. Ms. Blackwood, I'm Howard Chen, your grandfather's attorney. Chen? Are you related to? No relation, just coincidence. Your grandfather hired me 30 years ago to handle his affairs. He handed me a business card. We need to meet tomorrow to discuss his estate. Can you come to my office at 10 a.m.? Estate. My grandfather was a farmer. He lived on Social Security. Howard Chen smiled slightly. Please come tomorrow. There's quite a bit we need to discuss. I didn't understand what he meant. Not then, but the next morning, sitting in his office in downtown Sacramento, surrounded by mahogany furniture and walls of law books, I was about to discover that everything I thought I knew about my grandfather and my future was wrong. Howard Chen slid a folder across his desk toward me. Your grandfather's estate, he said, is valued at approximately $847 million. I stared at him. The words didn't make sense. I'm sorry, what? $847 million. Give or take a few million depending on current stock valuations. That's impossible. My grandfather was a farmer. He was a very smart farmer who bought 200 acres of land south of San Francisco in 1952 for $3,000 in. Land that is now some of the most valuable real estate in Silicon Valley. Land that tech companies have been leasing for decades. Land that your grandfather never sold, just quietly collected rent on while living simply on his farm. I couldn't breathe, couldn't process. $847 million. He was an extremely private man. He didn't want attention, didn't want people treating him differently. He lived modestly by choice, not necessity. Howard opened the folder. He left everything to you. The land, the investment portfolios, the various business holdings. All of it. Why didn't he tell me? He said, and I quote, Susu doesn't need money to know who she is. But one day, she might need money to escape people who want to tell her who she isn't. He made me promise not to contact you until after his death, no matter what. He said, you'd only need this inheritance if your ship was sinking. And if your ship was sinking, it meant he'd been right to protect you this way. Tears streamed down my face. My grandfather had known, had predicted this, had left me a way out. There's one more thing, Howard said. He pulled out an envelope, aged and yellowed. He left you a letter. He wrote it the day you got married. He told me to give it to you when the time came. I opened it with shaking hands. My dearest Susu, if you are reading this, I am gone. And if my attorney is giving you this letter, it means I was right to worry about that man you married. I didn't tell you about the money because I wanted you to choose your life freely. Not because of what I could give you. I wanted you to know you could stand on your own. And now you know you can. You survived him. You're still here. This money is not a gift. It's a tool. Use it to build the life you deserve. Use it to protect yourself. Use it to be free. You are strong, Susu. You always have been. You just didn't know it yet. With all my love, Grandpa, I sat in that office and sobbed. For my grandfather, for myself, for everything I'd lost and everything I'd just gained. What do you need me to do? Howard asked gently. I thought about Patricia's face when she'd told me I was nothing. Richard's cruelty when he'd said I didn't belong in his world. Jennifer's pity when she'd watched me break. I need you to call a lawyer in Boston. I said, wiping my tears. The best divorce attorney money can buy. And then I need you to teach me exactly how to use $847 million to destroy the people who tried to destroy me. Howard Chen smiled. No, you sound like your grandfather's granddaughter. The game had changed, and I was done playing defense. I flew back to Boston on Wednesday, December 18th, but I wasn't the same woman who'd left 5 days before. I sat in first class, paid for with my own money, from my own account, $2. $400 for a ticket I didn't have to beg anyone to buy. I wore the same jeans and sweater, but somehow they felt different now. Emma picked me up from Logan. How was it? She asked gently as we drove back to Somerville. Emma, I need to tell you something. I took a breath. My grandfather left me everything. His estate. It's worth $847 million. She nearly drove off the road. What? Your grandfather, the farmer, was worth nearly $1 billion. He owned land in Silicon Valley. He never told anyone? Emma pulled over to the side of the road and just stared at me. So you're rich. Very rich. Suddenly and completely rich, she started laughing almost hysterically. Oh my God, Sophia. Richard is going to lose his mind. He doesn't know yet. And I don't want him to know. Not until I'm ready. I told her my plan. It was risky, possibly petty, definitely satisfying. The next day, I met with Catherine Wu, the best divorce attorney in Boston, to $9.50 an hour, impossible to book, except when a California attorney with an $847 million estate as a client makes a call on your behalf. She agreed to meet me at a coffee shop in Cambridge. Away from her normal offices where someone might spot us together. Catherine was 55, impeccably dressed, with a reputation for destroying wealthy men in divorce court. Tell me everything, she said. I did. The affair, the financial abuse, the eviction, the conspiracy with Patricia, all of it. Catherine took notes, her expression growing harder with every detail. When I finished, she looked up. How much do you want? Nothing. She blinked. I don't want his money. I have my own. What I want is justice. I want him exposed. I want everyone who thinks I'm pathetic to know the truth. I want his mother to understand she destroyed her son's life for no reason. And I want to make sure he can never do this to anyone else. Catherine smiled. It was not a kind smile. I can work with that. Here's what we're going to do. She laid out a strategy. First, we'd file for divorce, but not yet. First, we'd gather evidence, record conversations, document everything, build an airtight case not just for divorce, but for financial fraud, emotional abuse, potentially even criminal conspiracy depending on what we found. This will take time, she warned. Months, maybe. Can you be patient? I've been patient for 3 years. I can wait a little longer. And can you keep pretending to be broke? Because the moment they know you have money, they'll change tactics. I'm staying with my friend in Somerville. I look broke. I am broke by their standards. They won't suspect anything. Good. Stay under the radar. Let Richard think he's won. Let him get comfortable. Comfortable people make mistakes. I spent Christmas on Emma's couch. Richard texted me once. Sign the divorce papers or I'll make this much worse for you. I didn't respond. Patricia called on Christmas Eve, her voice dripping with false sympathy. Sophia dear, I heard about your grandfather's passing. How unfortunate. I hope he left you something in his will. You'll need it? Thank you for your concern, I said neutrally. Richard mentioned you still haven't responded to his lawyer. You're only making this harder on yourself. I'm still looking for an attorney I can afford. Of course. Well, do take care. She hung up, probably smiling, thinking she'd won. They had no idea what was coming. January through March was a masterclass in strategic patience. While Richard and Patricia thought I was desperately searching for a cheap lawyer, Catherine Wu's team was systematically dismantling their lives. We subpoenaed bank records showing Richard had been siphoning marital funds into secret accounts for over a year, long before the affair started. We found emails between Richard and Patricia planning my exit, as they called it, detailing how they'd isolate me, control me, then discard me without paying a penny. We discovered Jennifer had been hired at Blackwood and Associates not because of her legal skills, but because Patricia had specifically recruited her to seduce Richard away from me. There were emails, explicit ones. Patricia had orchestrated my husband's affair. We found evidence that Patricia had been spreading rumors about me in Boston society, calling me unstable, saying I was a gold digger, telling people I'd threatened Richard, laying groundwork to destroy my reputation before I even knew I needed to defend it. But the best part, we found their new wills. Patricia and Gregory had indeed rewritten everything, but not to exclude Richard if he stayed married to me. They'd already cut him out entirely and left everything to Amanda, their daughter. The whole inheritance threat had been a lie from the beginning. They'd never intended to leave Richard anything, married or not. Richard didn't know. He destroyed his marriage, betrayed his wife, committed financial fraud, and conspired with his mother, all for an inheritance that didn't exist. This is enough? Catherine said in early April. We can file now and bury him. Not yet, I said. I want one more thing. What? I want a confession. I want him to admit it all on record. Sophia, that's risky. If he suspects, he won't. Trust me. I called Richard for the first time in 4 months. Sophia. He sounded surprised. Finally ready to sign the papers. Can we meet? In person. I want to understand why. Before I sign everything away, I need closure. He agreed, probably eager to finally be rid of me. We met at a coffee shop in Back Bay, neutral territory. I wore my Target dress and no makeup. I looked defeated, broken. I also wore a recording device Catherine had given me. Massachusetts is a 2-party consent state, but I didn't care. Even if the recording wasn't admissible in court, I wanted it for myself. I wanted to hear him admit everything. Richard looked good. Happy. He was wearing a new suit, and I'd bet anything Jennifer had picked it out. You look terrible, he said, sitting down across from me. I've been sleeping on my friend's couch for 4 months. How should I look? You could have signed the papers and moved on with your life. I need to understand something first. I leaned forward. Why? Why did you marry me if you never really wanted me? He sighed. Honestly, you were different. Refreshing. I was tired of the women my mother kept pushing on me. All those debutante types who only cared about status. You were real. Or so I thought. What changed? You did. Or maybe you didn't, and that was the problem. You stayed the same, small-town girl playing dress up in a world you didn't understand. It got old, Sophia. The wonder in your eyes when we went to charity galas. The way you'd ask me to explain who people were, what things meant. It was cute at first. Then it was embarrassing. Each word was a knife, but I kept my expression neutral. And Jennifer gets it. Gets my world, she was born into it. Conversations with her are easy. I don't have to explain anything. He leaned back. Look, I'm sorry it ended badly. I am. But you have to admit, we were never going to work long term. Did your mother ask you to make me miserable? To drive me away? She suggested it might be easier if you chose to leave. Less complicated legally, and emptying our bank accounts. That was my lawyer's advice. Protect assets before filing. Standard procedure. Even my personal savings. The account you weren't supposed to have access to. He shrugged. You signed the forms. Not my problem you didn't read them. What about the inheritance? Your mother's will. His expression shifted. What about it? She told me if you were still married to me when she died, you'd be cut out entirely. Was that true? Of course it's true. My mother doesn't make idle threats. Why do you think I'm so eager to finalize this divorce? I'm not losing $127 million because you're being stubborn. I almost laughed. He had no idea. His mother had been lying to him all along. So you destroyed our marriage, committed financial fraud, and emotionally abused me for months, all for money. Don't be dramatic. And yes, partially for money. But also because I wanted out and you wouldn't take the hint. He checked his watch. Are we done here? I have dinner plans. With Jennifer. Actually, yes. We're celebrating. She made junior partner. At your family's firm. Where your mother hired her specifically to seduce you away from me. His expression froze. What? Your mother recruited Jennifer. There are emails. She wanted you to have an affair with someone appropriate, so you'd leave me for someone she approved of. Jennifer was a plant, Richard. She didn't fall for you. She was hired to destroy your marriage. That's insane. You're making that up. Am I? Ask your mother. Ask Jennifer. Better yet, ask them if they've been texting about you behind your back, laughing about how easy you were to manipulate. I could see doubt creeping into his eyes. Good. I'm done here, I said, standing up. Sign whatever papers you want. I don't care anymore. But know this, everything you did to me, every cruelty, every lie, it was all for nothing. Your mother's inheritance doesn't exist. She already rewrote her will and left everything to Amanda. She told me in November, right before you conveniently started your affair. You destroyed your marriage and committed financial crimes for an inheritance you're never going to get. You're lying. Ask her. I grabbed my bag. Or don't. Either way, you'll find out eventually. Goodbye, Richard. I walked out, leaving him sitting there with his face pale and his hands shaking. 3 days later, Catherine got a call from Richard's attorney. He wanted to settle. Immediately. No trial. What are his terms? I asked. He's offering you $2 million and the brownstone. I laughed. Counteroffer, he keeps the brownstone and all his family's money. I want absolutely nothing from him except a full, public apology and an admission of fault in the divorce filing. Adultery, financial abuse, fraud. All of it on record. He'll never agree to that. Then I'll see him in court, where I'll bring all the evidence. The emails. The bank records. The conspiracy with his mother. Everything. Richard agreed in less than an hour. The divorce was finalized in May, with Richard Blackwood III admitting to adultery, financial fraud, and emotional abuse in official court documents that became public record. Boston society had a field day. The Blackwoods, pillar of old money respectability, exposed as manipulative, cruel, and morally bankrupt. Patricia called me once, her voice shaking with rage. You destroyed my family's reputation? No, I said calmly. You destroyed it yourself. I just made sure everyone knew the truth. We'll sue you for? For what? Telling the truth. Making your son admit what he did. Good luck with that. I paused. Oh, and Patricia, you might want to check your own bank accounts. I've been doing some research on your charitable foundation. Turns out embezzling donations is a federal crime. The FBI might be interested in those irregularities my accountants found. I hung up before she could respond. In June, I bought a penthouse in Boston's Seaport District. 24th floor, to ceiling windows, view of the harbor. I paid cash. 7 million. I started a foundation in my grandfather's name, funding scholarships for first-generation college students, particularly those from immigrant families. I endowed it with 50 million. I paid off all of Emma's student loans, her credit cards, and bought her a condo in Somerville. She cried for an hour, and in August, I attended a charity gala at the Boston Harbor Hotel, the same gala I'd gone to 2 years ago, wearing a dress Patricia had chosen, feeling like an imposter. This time, I wore a custom gown from a designer I'd commissioned myself. My mother's ring on one hand, a ring I designed with stones from my grandfather's estate on the other. I walked in alone, head high. Patricia was there, and Richard. And Jennifer, though she and Richard had apparently broken up, turns out their love didn't survive the scandal. They all saw me. I watched recognition dawn, then shock, then something like fear. I smiled at them. Not a friendly smile, not a forgiving smile, just a smile that said I won. I didn't speak to them, didn't acknowledge them. I simply existed in their space, living proof that they hadn't destroyed me, that I'd survived, that I'd thrived. A woman I didn't know approached me as the evening ended. She was maybe 40, elegant, nervous. "Excuse me, are you Sophia Chen?" "I am. I'm Rebecca Morton. I read about your divorce, what your husband did to you, what you did back." She took a breath. "My husband is doing the same thing to me right now, isolating me, controlling money, making me feel crazy." I thought I was alone. "But reading about you, seeing you here tonight," her voice broke. "Can I ask who your lawyer was?" I gave her Catherine Wu's card. "Tell her I sent you. She'll take your case." Rebecca started crying. "Thank you." Over the next year, 17 more women reached out to me. 17 women in similar situations. Wealthy husbands, financial abuse, systematic destruction of their sense of self. I connected all of them with lawyers, paid retainers when they couldn't afford them, and watched as they each took back their lives. Richard lost his partnership at his family's law firm after the scandal. Last I heard, he was working for a small corporate firm in Connecticut, divorced from the Boston society life he'd valued above everything else. Patricia and Gregory were investigated for financial crimes related to their foundation. They settled out of court, paying millions in fines. Their social standing never recovered. Jennifer left Boston entirely. I heard she moved to California. I hope she's learned something. But honestly, I don't think about her much anymore. Today, 3 years after that horrible December when I thought my life was ending, I'm sitting in my penthouse watching the sun set over Boston Harbor. The view is spectacular, the water turning gold and pink, sailboats dotting the horizon, the city lights beginning to sparkle. I'm 35 now. Single, wealthy, happy. I run my foundation full-time, helping students who remind me of myself. Caught between two worlds, trying to build something from nothing. I've funded over 200 scholarships in 3 years. I've reconnected with my mother's side of the family in China, visiting them for the first time since I was a child. I've learned Cantonese properly, reclaiming the language Richard once dismissed. I've dated a little, nothing serious, but healthy relationships with good men who respect me. I'm not in a hurry. I'm learning to enjoy my own company first, and sometimes, when the city is quiet and the harbor reflects the stars, I think about my grandfather. The man who protected me even after death. The man who knew I'd need a way out before I even knew I needed saving. "Thank you, Grandpa." I whisper to the night sky. I finally know my strength. The inheritance didn't make me strong. I was always strong. I just needed to be pushed to the edge to discover it. Richard and Patricia tried to erase me from their world, from their will, from their lives. They thought money and status made them powerful. They thought I was nothing without them. They were wrong. I am Sophia Chen, granddaughter of immigrants, survivor of financial abuse, builder of my own empire. And I am exactly where I'm supposed to be. Did you like the story, and which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you liked the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.